Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So the Z28 made it back to the track. We went to Bradenton Motorsports Park a few weeks ago and kind of just trying to dial the car in. We ran a personal best of a 560 at 124 1/8 with a 129 60 foot, I believe. So the car was working actually very well, just like it was the first time. We were just trying to get it dialed in more and more to make faster and faster passes, obviously. We ran into the first and a few issues. The alternator kept throwing the belt. We kept throwing the belt off the alternator because of the bracket that we were using. So the first rip, threw the alternator bracket, and then we had to charge the car in between rounds, which kind of sucked, but it was manageable. The car did well. The battery held its charge in between rounds, so can't really complain there. But since this is a street car, we are going to be putting a different bracket on there that we can get our belt back onto our alternator, and hopefully it stays on. So the biggest issue we had was our belt coming off of our alternator, and I believe it was just due to the bracket that we had. It wasn't very supportive. This is the new ICT billet low mount, or a low profile, low mount, whatever they want to call it, truck style spacing alternator. So I will probably have to notch the frame a little bit. A little hard to see, but the stud for where the power goes is very close to the frame rail. So probably trim the frame just a little bit so there's more clearance there, but hopefully this works out better. Seems to be way more robust, so I think that's going to work for us. The only thing we have to do is change the steering setup just a little bit. The idler arm is very close to the alternator still, and we had the same problem with the other mount, but the other mount was a little bit higher. So that is actually a smaller alternator. It's a 105 amp style, where we had the 140, 160 big truck style alternator. So swapping alternators, swapping mounts. Hopefully we can get some resolution on that. We got our ICT billet mount fully installed. It is loose right now, that way I can put the belt on. And our steering issue, we're at full lock right now, and our steering issue seems to have gone away. So I put a little bit of a bend into the idler arm with my press, move the bolt holes down a little bit on there. So we'll have to realign the car, which kind of a bummer, but at least we have clearance with our alternator. So I am really hopeful that this alternator bracket is going to work better than the last one. So I guess we'll see once we get it built. We'll go ahead and test it out. We took it to the track last time. Just kept wanting the wheelie. I mean, literally every pass, we pull the wheelie, every pass. So that has partially to do with our shocks that we have in there. So they are the hybrid style coilovers, where it's the lower mount is a T-bar mount, and then the upper is like that kind of eyelet, or whatever you want to call it. It's not really an eyelet, but whatever it's called. It's like a stud mount or whatever. But we have too heavy of a spring rate. We have a 450-pound spring rate on the front. We need to bring them down to like a 375. I think that will keep less suspension energy in the front end, so when they does try to pull the wheels, it's not pushing it, it's pushing itself down. That's what we believe is happening. We're also out of rebound on the front, so we cannot slow the front down anymore. So that's a problem, because we need to slow the front down to load up or have the weight transfer to the rear to really, bite on the tire. So a few things with that. We can go to an AFCO stock style shock that's already in it, but just obviously a better AFCO shock with a smaller spring rate. Or we can wait, because I believe TRZ Motorsports is making a true coilover mount for the upper, or just basically a true coilover mount for these cars, for F-body, second gen F-bodies. So hopefully they do that. It could be some time, could be about 6 months, but I'd rather do that and do it right and just get a nice true coilover AFCO shock, instead of trying to deal with these stock style stuff anymore. It's still a stock style suspension, it's just a different coilover mount. So not too big of a deal, not too much of a change, but will involve some work, but that's about it. So let's dive into this alternator mount, see if we can get it to work. Hopefully we can, and we'll get our steering back in order. And we also have one more thing. The rear shocks need to be revalved, and I'll go over that here shortly. Right now we are running our Viking Crusader AJ valving shocks, and we were on 18 of 21 clicks on rebound. So we were running out of rebound. The car probably doesn't need that much more rebound, but I would like the ability to adjust the rebound more. So what I did is went ahead and ordered a revalve kit from Viking, and I've already done one shock just to learn it, and it just comes with a new orifice, new needle, spring and a ball for the knob itself. So what we'll do is we'll go over how to revalve these shocks. Very simple, actually. I was kind of surprised, but like I said, just want more adjustability in the rear. All right, guys, so it's pretty simple. Like I was explaining earlier, what you need to do is grab an Allen key. This is a 5/64 Allen key. And what we're gonna do actually first is loosen your rebound all the way up, extend the shock as far as it'll go. Then you're going to take the, the knob off. So just push down on it. There's a little spring in there. Get the set screw loose, and this should just pop right off. Don't lose the ball, because you need the ball. So that, I always just put it back and just set that aside for now. Now there is anti-seize on all this stuff, so I'm gonna go ahead and wipe it off and just redo the anti-seize when I get to that point. So from there, you need a 16mm socket. And what you want to do is loosen. Loosen that guy. Sometimes it brings the valve out, like this one's going to pull the valve out. I'm going to lose some shock fluid, not a big deal. It's already extended, so that's all that matters. I like to prop it up, right? And then take the valve out of the little cover. Again, bunch of anti-seize on there, so everything's going good. Put the cover to a side, put the needle to the side as well. And then I do have a little syringe. I'm actually just gonna, besides spilling it all, pull out as much fluid as you can, because you'll save that for later. And grab yourself a flathead, clean it, of course. And then there's just a little orifice in there, a little jet per se. You just want to loosen it up. Take it out. Sometimes they come out, sometimes you use a magnet. So this is our old jet. We're going to put that to the side. We're going to grab our new jet and our new needle without losing them, because they're not large in size. All right. Take the new jet, put it on the screwdriver, if it'll fit, which it does. And just, all you're going to do is reverse of how you took it apart. So jet goes in. Quick little tighten. All right, now you have your needle and then your old one, right? Don't get them mixed up. I'm not sure if there's any changes on the needle, but I think it's just the valve itself. So we're gonna go ahead and clean this off. And this is actually a left-handed thread. So what you wanna do is hold this, grab some needle nose, and just give it a good firm grip. And I'm going to tighten, basically, to get it loose. But not very tight, but you want to tighten it. I say tighten it because it's left-hand thread, so everybody's used to the same thread. All right, I'm going to put it into the new seat, or new needle, sorry. All right, so now that you get your cap back on, a little bit of anti-seize on the divots, I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to put the ball on the divot and then put the cap on. It seems to be easier to hold it. So I'm just gonna make sure it's lined up. Just kind of gently push it on there. We're in our little mount. Give it some pressure. And then install our set screw again. Okay, set screw is tight. Oh, there we go. Now you should just be able to feel getting full clicks. If you guys can see that. Probably hear it. Alright, so we're full loose. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Alright, 21 clicks, so we're good. So I'm gonna go full loose again, and then compression is gonna be all whacked. All right, so now our AJ valved shock is now an AM valved shock, so we should have much more rebound on that. We covered the alternator, we covered the steering, we covered the shocks. last but not least, we have the dump valves. Now, our dump valve has never worked on this car, and I found out why. So a good buddy, Steven, helped me out again, reached out with some wiring knowledge. So I have the dump valve being powered by the trans brake solid state relay. Now, that's all fine and dandy if it was on its own relay, but I do have the dump valve wired to the ECU PWM negative. So anything more than 2 volts, or sorry, 2 amps, the ECU is not going to trigger it because it's too much amperage for the ECU. So when I click the trans brake, it's already seeing all of the input that's through the amperage through that, that power source, through that relay. So when the dump valves are commanded to come on, they're not coming on because the amperage is already too high. So it's not letting the dump valves ground out, basically. I can't pulse them. So what I need to do is actually take the dash out and rewire. I need to get a different power source to the dump valve. I don't necessarily need a relay just yet. I'm gonna try to do it without a relay, and if I have to, I'll add a relay and go from there. But trying a simple route first, so we'll dive into there, we'll get the dash pulled out, and I'll go further into that, and I'll actually show you guys what I'm talking about more in depth, that way you can actually see what I mean. All right, everybody. So it might look a little confusing, but this is all of our wiring. So if you refer back to any of our wiring videos, you guys could see how I did all this. But long story short, our dump valve has not been working, and I've figured out why. Thanks to my good friend Steven from Precision Fab and Wiring. Remember, that's where we got all of the stuff, the leash board, the wiring kit, and the Race Wire Solutions switch panel. So head on over to that website, get yourself a kit. We're not sponsored by them, but we always believe in the parts that we use, and 100% wouldn't have made this wiring so easy unless we had that kit. So back to the point, our dump valves are not working. So we have a solid state relay right there. We have one for the trans brake, and what I did, trying to be smart about it, I branched the power wire from that relay. So the blue wire that comes off of the solid state splits into 2, one for the trans brake and a ground, and then one for the dump valve and ground. Okay, so that was my idea in the beginning. And why is that ground so tight? I just realized it's super tight. It's not good. But either way, when we activate the trans brake, and if I put a reading on these pins for amp draw, the amp draw is too high for the Holley to trigger in the ECU, so it's not sending it ground because it knows it's too much amperage for the ECU to trigger. So when we have it set up as PWM negative, the ECU is giving it ground. It's pulsing the ground to the dump valve to actuate it, to make it work for time or however we set it up. That's not the case because it wasn't, or sorry, it is the case, but it wasn't working because we had too much amps being drawn by the trans brake, so it was interfering with the dump valve operation as well. So what I think I'm going to try to do is, there's actually a green wire that comes off of the Holley harness for, it's like 12 volts. It's usually for a fuel pump. I don't know if that's relay triggered, so if it's relay triggered, that means I can run it back to the ECU PWM negative, just how we have it wired up, and it should function. I should be able to pulse it. So if I just give it hot, give it 12 volts all the time, and it's not relay triggered, I'm not going to be able to pulse it. It's just going to have, it's either on or off. So I don't want to do that. I want to be able to pulse it. That way we can use it down track for the shift change and whatnot. So more to come on that. But what we need to do is either figure out, well, what we need to do is get a sufficient power source that does not have a lot of amp draw. Now, I've got 2 options I'm thinking of. I can either use the boost control solenoids. I can use the power from these guys because these do not take a lot of amp draw at all, even when they're functioning. Or, like I was saying, this green wire actually off of the Holley. So you got green, blue, and red. The red goes to, I forgot, I can't remember. But we could probably use that blue wire. So we're gonna give it a shot. we'll see what we come up with. So I'm gonna do some testing, see if I can't get it to function while the boost control solenoids are active, to see how much amps they're drawing each. So we'll go from there. But yeah, we're gonna get it figured out. All right, so we got all of our wiring hooked up. Like I said earlier, we tapped into our boost control power, so that is now running into our trans dump valve solenoid. So go over here to the Holley function of our pinout test, and if you could hear, or just listen closely, it's a little hard to hear. It is turning on. So turn our boost control solenoids on, and then we can turn the dump on. So she is functioning now, which is good. I'll still have to do a test once we get the car outside. Probably put up on the brake, and I'll configure that in the ECU to turn on with the trans brake. I do have a little button, not a button, but like a toggle light on the dash itself, so I'll be able to see if it's turning on or not, and also be able to see in the ECU. So hopefully that works. It should work. Don't see why it wouldn't work. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and get the dash back installed, and then we'll go ahead and try it out. So here's the setup for doing our alignment. We got our quick trick alignment setup. It's one of their cheaper ones, but it's just for the front. They have an all-four wheel one. Pretty simple to use. Kind of a pain to get, you know, all lined up on the wheel and just make sure everything's nice and square before you start. I also do run a string from basically from the back tire to the front, and I'll show you why. So if I measure back here, and I'm just gonna do millimeters since it's probably easier to see on camera, but we're about 50 millimeters from the back of the wheel, and then same thing up front, right? So that means the wheel is straight, as in it's square. So when we go forward, we know exactly that our string is centered with the wheel. So let's do the front of the wheel. On the front, we hit about, what was it, 108, 107, 108. Yeah, it looks like 107 millimeters, by the way. And then same thing on the back. And we're at about 103. So we're about 4 to 5 millimeters of toe in on the front on this tire. So I like doing it this way because I can check my tape measure. That's showing close to 72 inches, and we are just past 72 inches. So right now, this front wheel is about a 1/4 inch, maybe a little bit more, or sorry, about 1/8 of an inch or more toed in, okay? So on this one, we're gonna do the same thing, right? We're gonna do our string and get it to line up. That way we know that with the back of the car, the front will track with the back of the car, if that makes sense. Because if you do the front alignment, and I've done this before just by accident, if you do the alignment and not know where your axle is straight, like if it's offset or something, you can adjust for that in your steering up front, in your suspension changes. So when you do your alignment, you know that your front is tracking true to your rear. So you always want your front and rear to match up. That way you can properly align it. Now, I'm sure other people just use tape measure and tread depth and whatnot, or tread depth, but you know, on the tread. But I want to make sure this thing drives pretty straight. The straighter it drives, the easier it is to drive as well. So, but yeah, we're making progress. We got one side done. We're gonna go ahead and do the other side, double check the alignment, and move some cars around and go drive around. All right, let's go ahead and fire up the Camaro, see if our alternator is alternating. All right, guys, well, everything seems to be going well, so didn't throw the belt. Just put it up on the two-step, we'll call it. I didn't have boost controller on, so it was a little lazy getting up there, but didn't even actually hit the two-step, but I just wanted to make sure the belt wasn't gonna fly off. And yeah, everything seems to be working like how it should, so I'll definitely call that a success. So now we should be able to go faster now that the dump valve is actually working. So we should get a better leave, and then we need to manipulate it for the shift change, which I'm not sure how I'm gonna do because it's manually shifted, it's not air shifted or anything like that. So maybe in the future we'll go to an air shifter or electronic shifter with the operator shifter from Motion Raceworks. But other than that, yeah, now we can take back to track. It's driving straight, so our alignment did good. And I'm gonna do a once over the car, make sure everything's tight again, and yeah, call it good. Oh, never lost her belt, so that's a good thing. But as for the Tahoe, you guys, still running into the same issue. At least a couple days ago, it was leaving me stranded. Wouldn't even connect to the ECU when I would try to scan the truck. So we're still pulling the 5-volt reference code for number 2, as in like the second 5-volt reference. Crank sensor code, crank position sensor code, and then a few barrel codes here and there. So thought maybe it would have been the barometric pressure sensor. I tried another one, didn't seem to fix it. So what I did, every time I got stranded, I had to go into the glove box where the ECU is, and I had to kind of just fiddle around with it, just move some things around, and it would finally let me clear the code. So what I did the other day is pulled all that out, looked at all the wires, looked at all the pins on the ECU, reconnected everything, make sure everything's nice and tight, good connections and whatnot. There was no corrosion, no moisture, no nothing like that in there. So what could be possibly making these codes? I have no idea. I did replace the crank sensor. Barometric pressure sensor did not fix it. Talking with Justin over at Spear Tech, the guys that make this harness and the ECU combo for this truck, which is pretty much what Killer Performance always uses. Yeah, he's thinking it was more of either a wiring or a PCM issue after talking to him for a little bit about sensors and whatnot. So tried everything that he recommended with no luck. Ever since I did reseat the connectors on the ECU, the codes have not popped up. I drove for about 25 minutes yesterday, just around the block, nothing, no codes. The only thing that's a little bit worrisome to me right now is the transmission's shifting very soft. But when you get on it, it shifts pretty crisp, how it should. The torque management is turned off on this truck, so it should be a little bit more firm than what it was, or what it is now. So I don't know if it has something to do with the codes, or maybe the tune file got messed up. I'm not sure. I'm gonna see if Dr. Tune-em-all can come over and just see if everything looks good in the tune. Hopefully it does. I tried unplugging the paddles. I tried unplugging the DSX auxiliary fuel pump. Can't really figure anything out. So fortunately, on this newer technology stuff, especially with like factory computers, sometimes when you run into an issue, it's not the easiest thing to figure out. So overall, I mean, we're working on it. We're trying to get it all buttoned back up, but she's a little dusty. It's pollen season here in Florida. So if you guys don't know, the truck's got a nice green tinge to it, which kind of sucks. But either way, I mean, we're gonna get it back up and running 100%. My confidence level in driving it right now, I'm a little skeptical because I don't like to be stranded. But either way, I gotta drive it to make sure it works. Like I said, right now it's working, so I'm not sure if I fixed the problem or if the problem still exists. That's gonna do it for this video, you guys. Hope you enjoyed. Like always, thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for subscribing. We will see you in the next episode.